CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Hi, Krister.
Hi there, Greg.
It's really nice to catch up with you. You and I were visiting a little bit before hitting the record button, and one of the things I'm really interested in hearing from you, we've got a lot of people know about the mainstream community, and they're out of Australia. They're getting ready to go do the Mainstream UK Summit. That's going to be October 21st, 2025. That is at Millennium Point in Birmingham, England. But I wanted to ask you, because you've been such a part of that for so many years, why is Mainstream such an incredible event? What do people need to know about Mainstream, and why do you love it?
Yes, I really love Mainstream. And I can say it again that Mainstream events, they are the best in the world. And how can I say that? Well, I've been involved since 2004, I think, in many of their events in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, United States, and I will be involved with a short keynote at Birmingham, as you mentioned. And how can I say that they are the best ones? Well, I've been involved in conferences all over the world. The ones I just mentioned, and in addition to that, many of the major events here in the United States, Canada, Asia, Europe, many of them there, and so on and so forth. So I have a base I can really compare with. And why they become so good is that they do actually do research, right? They really research. And they, based on that research, they have listened to the people. And according to that, they design the programs and they plan and schedule their events in absolutely detail. And that's why they, of course, become so good, right? And they have never disappointed me in the number of speakers they have, the quality of the speakers, that they get the right people to the event. And to me, it's very important because they focus on people. And I've been in this business for, I think it's 63 years, since I started very early. And I realize more and more it is about good people executing work in well-defined and reinforced processes. And that's the focus on that conference. And that's why I like it. And I say it is the best in the world.
Yeah, and so now I've been, I talked to Steve Morris and different people on the team about what makes the conference special, and I hear some of those same things, and then I see with the one they're just now wrapping up in Australia, in Melbourne, the people that are there, the people that are legitimate, what I like to call heavy hitters or bona fide practitioners of industry that are sharing knowledge, but it's not really to sell things, it's to uncover and find solutions to real problems. And oftentimes those things don't change all that much, but there's always an opportunity for someone that's new to the event or returning to the event to continue to stack those bits of knowledge that they can take back to their city, their plant that is struggling with reliability, availability, right? And it's all practical. That idea of community, we hear it at a lot of conferences, but we don't see it as often as we would like, right?
Right, that's true. But you see it mainstream.
That's the intention behind it. And then I heard about the research for Mainstream UK Summit, which I'm really looking forward to seeing you there and seeing your keynote. But there was extensive research done ahead of time, just as you described, and then they build the program around all that. So it's fascinating to me what kind of work goes into a lot of these events, but then how do we figure out which ones are the different ones that are going to make a real impact for you? So that's a really incredible story for me to hear, and also to hear from you, having been in the industry for 63 years. We don't often get the chance to learn from and talk to someone like that.
Yeah, but you mentioned one thing, and that is not many things have changed more than technology, and it continues to change and become more and more better and better and more affordable. But actually, the oldest book you can read about this is from about 90 AD, about how the Romans maintained their pyramids. No, not the pyramids, the aqueducts.
Ah,
And basically the same thing. You need to visit the equipment. You need to identify the equipment, the aqueducts. You need to do planning of work and then scheduling of work. And okay, technology has changed and dramatically since I started also.
well, so with that, I want to remind everyone, for Mainstream UK, you can go to mainstreamcommunity.com and you can look that up. You'll find it up there and get signed up. There's still some early bird discounts to attend. There might even be 1 or 2 sponsorship opportunities. So I want everyone to go and check that out. But it's also time for me to intro you in, sir. So everyone, I've told you many times for about 3.5 years that I have the honor and the pleasure to bring the real heavy hitters, the bona fide experts, the people that actually know these things, so that I don't have to do any guesswork. So I want to welcome to CMMS Radio, Christer Idhammar. He is with IDCON. As you know, he is the founder of IDCON. He has already mentioned to you that for approximately 23 years, somewhere in that range, he's been speaking and participating in Mainstream, but he's been at countless events around the world helping people, and he spent much more time than that on plant floors and in the environments and with the people. So, Christer Idhammar, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thank you. See you in Birmingham.
Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions. I gathered up a little bit of a questionnaire for you, and these are just random things that I want to kind of pick your brain on. So the first one is, this is a good one. In your extensive career, has anything really changed? And across the new companies that you engage with, are they generally at a higher maturity, or are things in that regard still the same?
It is very much the same. When I go out there and talk to people in a plant, in a mill, or in a mine, something, you still have to explain the difference between planning work and scheduling work, just to take one example. It's so, yeah. And we have to remember, it's always new people coming in, and I call it the difficulty with too much knowledge. You assume that this is so basic. Of course, people understand it. No, they don't. There are many new people out there that think this is fantastic, that you talk about simple work processes, planning, scheduling, root cause, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So the only thing I see is truly changing is technology.
Do you find that?
Sorry?
I was going to say, do you find the technology is more or less helpful when it comes to people that don't understand those basic fundamentals?
I think it can be distracting in many ways. And I love new technology. I'm a gadget guy like anyone. Just name a gadget I don't have. I really love it. And I have promoted new technology and introduced it in Singapore, in China, in India, and many other countries. So I like technology. But many organizations still today are not ready for it. So if you're not ready for the new technology, then let's say you just put sensors everywhere, right? They can measure anything, but it would be an overload of information. And if they are an organization that are, let's say, 30% or more reactive, which is very, very common, you distract it away from the focus, and you start talking about the new technology is going to solve everything, right? But you just get more data to handle, and you just don't know what to do with it. And of course, if you're ready for it, let's say you have only 10% reactive maintenance, yeah, then I think you're ready for even the 5% of all equipment that requires an RCM analysis. But otherwise, it can be destructive.
So that was interesting what you said. So I'm not a maintenance and reliability professional. I don't have that certification, but when you talk about the utilization, the application of RCM,
yeah,
it's not supposed to be for everything, right? And I'd love to have you explain why that's so important when people think they need to take that strategy and apply it to their entire plant. Can you give us a little bit on that?
Oh, yeah. I have been involved since, I think I heard about it the first time, 1968, from Horst Grothus, a professor in Germany. And since then, I used parts of RCM. And the essential part of that RCM is really to understand how failures develop. Some of them are totally random, most of them. And some few, you can say, they are regular. You can predict when they will occur, right? There are very few. That philosophy is very important to understand. And I think it's very important to understand RCM, what it is. But I have yet to see any plant at all that has successfully implemented RCM. It belongs, in my opinion, can you imagine if all designers of equipment would use RCM when they look at their equipment and look at maintainability, look at reliability design? That's really where it belongs. Otherwise, I think people should be trained in it. But if you take it to a plant and say, this is what we're going to implement now, that's like shooting mosquitoes with a huge cannon.
That's an interesting way to put it. And I think this gets back to the concept of design intent and what the responsibility is of maintenance. I was curious myself when it comes to maintenance. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for teams to improve their maintenance practices and actually increase machine availability? And where do you think the technology then fits in, or is that not even part of that discussion?
Oh, it's definitely part of that discussion. For example, it's obvious if you have a rotating equipment and a lot of bearings, you use vibration analysis, shock pulse measurement, oil analysis, ferrography, or whatever is affordable to you, right? That's a given. That they've been around for so many years. But otherwise, it's really the very core process or processes of maintenance that is important to implement and understand. First of all, it's prevention of maintenance, which of course come down to lubrication. Good lubrication will prevent failures from ever occurring, right? It's about keeping hydraulic fluids very, very clean and cool, etc. It is about precision alignment to really precision of the equipment. And in some few cases, fixed time maintenance, which might apply to 5-10% of equipment. Otherwise, and then the process of work management, which starts with inspections. Whether that is look, listen, feel, smell, which is still absolutely important and very cost effective to train people in, right? And then, of course, all the technologies that you feel useful is also there. And then when you find a failure, you need to plan the corrective action. And when you plan the corrective action, you need to schedule when and who is going to execute it, and then you execute that.
Two separate things.
And that chain from identifying a problem to execute the work in a scheduled way is often broken. And that chain must not break, but it's broken of simple things like emotional priorities. someone, often in operations, meet in the morning meeting and say, this is what we need to do today. And the maintenance organization sit there and say, well, can't it wait until tomorrow or next week? And often it can. No, they want it done. So there is a lack of partnership between operations and maintenance in that case. I can go on and on for this. And when it comes to new technologies, I call my latest book Knocking Bolts. And that was because I was very young in 1961 when I became I entered a big tanker in the engine room as an apprentice, right? And I was at 8 years on board ships like that, and it taught me a lot because you have no one to call for. You better do everything yourself. But anyway, on that tanker from Scandinavia up to Karg Island in the Persian Gulf, we passed on the second trip, which were very boring, long trips. But anyway, Palermo, to go in to a shipyard there and to do some work on the hull. And when we came there, they said, Christer, you go down in the engine room, you open up all the crankcases on these 30 feet tall diesel engines, right? You climb up to the crosshead and you take a hammer with you and you give every bolt a nut, a blow with a hammer. That's it. That's all they told me. And I did it in record time because I wanted to go ashore, of course, right? And have fun there in the libraries and whatever. But anyway, I didn't know why I did it. 3 months later, on board another ship, same procedure, knock bolts in the engine, in the crankcases. Then I learned why I did it. Every bolt and nut you hit with a hammer, it was quiet in the engine room then, right? Gave a ring, and one was dead. Oh, I'm checking for loose connections. It's a very important PM procedure. And after that, I always called our training know why training, not only know do training or know why, know how training. And I was on board a ship and I knew the chief engineer not long ago. And I said, what do you do with the bolts and nuts in the crankcases? And he said, obviously, we knock bolts. And there are sensors around that can do it, but it won't replace that, And I can give you, I've written a whole book about just simple, basic inspection methods.
And those are the real things that seem to continue to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
And it's because no one has attached the value to it until the failure occurs, and they've lost sight of the value still then because now they're in repair mode, they're in reactive mode. Whereas, I'm sure some of these mutual friends in the industry we share, someone like George Williams or Joe Anderson. I'm not sure if you know Brian Bieski. He's on the younger side, one of those 30-somethings that's really strong in maintenance and reliability. Corey Dickens, Andy Gager. There's so many of these people that I've had the pleasure of knowing now, and many of them are dear friends of mine. And they always come back to these basics where you could literally walk a plant floor to do inspections and check bolts.
Yeah.
Much like what you were saying, but maybe not on an engine, to make sure they're secure, that there's no play. And that in and of itself can be a best practice that improves your machine availability. And most people would think that's nonsense. It's just a little bolt. That's not a big deal.
Oh, it's a very big deal.
But it actually is. It's the little things that add up, right?
Yeah, and how many times I've seen failures because you look at the bolt and the nut and then you see a washer under it and it's corroded because they used the wrong material, and then the washer starts corroding, and when it corrodes it expands, and after a while the bolt is loose. Just by seeing a thing like that, Or you look at the V-belt drive and you say, check the pulley, the sheave. If the bottoms are shiny, you better do something soon because it's going to start slipping. And if you tighten it, you will double the load on the bearing, shorten the life by 10 times, 90% actually. Load factor.
Whereas
simple things.
Those are the things like oftentimes we use very simplistic examples when we're dealing with people that might lack a certain maintenance maturity, or maybe they're in roles that don't understand about maintenance, but they've been thrown into that role. And you have to kind of give them real life examples, like maybe from your household or from your vehicle. And
Yes.
it's those little things that prevent the most costly failures when we talk about a vehicle.
Yeah.
There's a lot at stake there. But then when we go into a plant environment or on an oil rig, how about on an oil rig where certain maintenance practices are skipped, neglected, maybe they have no awareness? We've seen what can happen with that, with the BP oil spill, right? Something
Oh, yeah.
can literally explode, cost
Yeah.
lives, and do immense long-term, very expensive damage and disrupt local economies, if not global. I have a question on this is more of an opinion thing. So, which would you prefer, skills or technology?
Oh, skills.
And why is that the most important? I think we've already talked about it, but why would you say that's the answer?
Because if you have skills, you will obviously also learn technology, or you might even know the technology, and you would have skills to understand where you would apply the technology, right? So I would say skills and perhaps more important, attitude. Attitude and amplitude, and you can teach people anything. But if you lack those, all right, you can still be a good mechanic, for example. But really, if you have the right attitude and aptitude, then that's it.
Then you can become great.
Oh, absolutely.
Can
If
can
good leadership.
Now that's another one I was going to talk about is leadership. There's a lot of misconceptions about leadership versus boss, and we see often, and I think when I say we, I'm borrowing a lot of the experiences and perspectives of experts like yourself and people that have really been in exponentially more locations and seen these teams in action. But when it comes to building teams, there are a lot of misconceptions about how that really works. And it often comes back to the why and being amongst your people. We hear this, get out from behind your desk. Does leadership always need to get out from behind their desk? Is that really true? Or are there leaders that can actually lead well without being amongst their people?
uh, well, I believe that if you are a maintenance manager, a plant manager, and you started an reliability and maintenance improvement initiative, whatever that might be, you have to understand you deal with people here. You need to be visible, engaged, and caring. Show that. You can't be invisible and just have a hallelujah session and now we do this and look at this slide presentation is fantastic and so on. Need to be out there and do at least a walk and know the people. I would say it doesn't need to take more than an hour a week if you do it repeatedly, you know. But if you are never visible on the workshop floor, you know what I think the day you will show up on the work floor, that means trouble.
Yeah, they want to hide.
But if you're there and you just ask some simple questions, we agreed on this, and how can we support you, whatever happens, right? Can you show me some good examples, some simple things? And you do that often, well, then you're welcome. And this is good. People like to be recognized for simple things, you know.
Yeah, when you're seeing, and I'm not talking about all this nonsense people are talking about. I'm talking about the basic principle of having a voice, not like some kind of movement or anything like that, but more about, it's pretty awesome when the people in management and leadership know who you are and they've made it known that they appreciate you. They don't have to come and coddle you or anything like that. It's just a small step in, if they remember your name, that actually makes an impact. And if they know what you do and you know why that's important to the business as a whole, because what I want to transition into now is I love to talk about CMMS, maintenance management software, and I like to talk about how leadership and frontline and everything in between really needs to be connected and cohesive, much like a sports team or anything else. Operations means everyone.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, oh, they'll do that, we're not involved. But when it comes to deploying solutions, technology solutions, the real success, I tend to think, boils down to the basics of having a good culture and everybody knows why we're doing this. Why does it matter to the business? Why does it matter to my job? And why does it matter to the person on my left and on my right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how organizations tend to get that wrong? And is it really possible for them to fix it, or is it always going to be
I
the
think,
thing?
of course, I don't have a silver bullet answer on that one. And there are most people who specialize just on that part of it. But I think the biggest challenge right now is the next generation. If you can find them even, who wants to go in to a sometimes dirty plant, sometimes very nice, very clean and so forth. But, we have to understand that we have to understand them and adapt to that. Because, when I started working, overtime was a big thing. That was great. I made more money on overtime on board a ship, for goodness sake, than I made everything. And money was important, And it was kind of, you do this and you follow this. And that's what we did, right? It was less of an argument. We have a new generation that money does not make them tick. Overtime is not at all necessary what they want. No, I don't want that. They value free time. Many of them just want to work for, I think that it's said that the next generation from 18 and up, they stay on the job only 3 years. And then they want to travel around the world for a while. And I mean, it's a total different world.
Yeah.
And how will you handle that if you're my age, or let's say you're just 55?
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it that way, in that we all know it, and we do talk about it, but we haven't talked about it enough to
No.
make a difference. And the more I think about it, being of my age and looking back and making jokes like, oh, we're our parents now. And then can you imagine what it was like for the grandparents with our parents, and then our parents with us, going, oh, look at the world now. And these kids don't get it. And the reality is, it's everybody's responsibility to work on that. And we struggle sometimes. I know I do, to adopt the newer things, the newer lingo. I don't understand sometimes why this is important to them, and something that I think is really important doesn't matter to them at all. And we have to stop finger pointing and start finding ways forward. And that's where I think a lot of people drop the ball, whether you're bringing in technology to your organization or not. I actually think that helps with the younger generations if they know you have tools that make their jobs possible. But there is no silver bullet. It's just fascinating to see these generational differences. I'd like to ask you one that's cultural in nature. And I've often looked at and understood certain mindsets, such as European mindsets versus North American mindsets, to be quite different. Now, specifically, I'm talking about the United States of America. And this isn't necessarily to compare countries, folks. This is to compare thought processes, our cognition, our cognitive styles, cognition, and how we think and how we adopt things that are about excellence, like processes and what really matters. Is there anything you could tell me about, say, how you think in Sweden, Scandinavia, throughout Europe versus the United States in maintenance and reliability when it comes to how it shows up on the shop floor, on the plant floor? Is there a difference in thought processes?
Yeah, I done 10 so-called benchmarking tours with mostly Americans, but also Canadians, Latin Americans, Australians, 2 Scandinavia, and also I think was UK, 10 of them. and that was like putting a conference on the road. We had a bus, we traveled everywhere, and they visited plants, and they showed us the plants, of course, and they told about their processes and what they were doing, and then in the evening, every evening, we had a discussion, right, about what did you learn, what are the differences, and so forth. And of course, it was benchmarking. So first thing they understood that was you can't benchmark numbers because how you need to know exactly how did they come up with that number, etc., etc., etc. Right? There are some numbers we came up with that cut through all borders. Just to mention on the side here, and that was instead of talking about maintenance cost per ton or piece, you talk about maintenance hours you spend for a product, including contractors, overtime, everything. That was one that could be compared if it was the same size and so. But otherwise, what they learned, and I saw the difference, was the way, in general in Europe, it's more of a long-term thinking. It's much more of a long-term thinking, and they are not government-owned. They are privately held companies. We didn't go to any other companies more than privately held companies. And that was the way they built their plants. And I talked to, at that time, the president of Avesta. That was a big company at that time. It has most probably changed name now, manufacturing stainless steel. And they said, well, you know something, that in Europe, we use 5 times more stainless steel in our designs than they do in North America, especially US. And when we came to one of the plants, they had even all the handrails and so forth were of stainless steel. And I asked them, hey, how can you afford this? How can you afford this? What kind of luxury is this? And they said, well, we did a life cycle cost analysis on that. And it showed that if we have taken black iron and paint, or we had other material, in 5 years it would pay off for the stainless steel we have.
Mm.
And I remember that the maintenance manager from US said, heck, in my plant, we would buy black iron and we wouldn't even paint it. So, okay, that kind of nailed it down. And then it was, of course, how do you attract people? Well, actually, they spent a lot of money in a nice work environment. They were shocked almost when they saw some of the locker rooms. Really, really nice, even with a swimming pool outside and even in the winter and so forth. And they answered, well, it pays off. It pays off. We want to keep our people. And then you said, I've been in so many paper mills, steel plants, God, in US, where a supervisor was sitting in a cubby hole in the basement and didn't see the daylight. And these were the big things. If they were more productive, that I'm not sure. I think that the US can be very productive. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
I think there's
attitude because I think it came with job security. Of course, people are fired over there, also in Sweden when I lived there, and I had my own company in Sweden also, and I had to fire people and so forth. But it was a little tougher process, and you had to be more fair to people. You couldn't just say you're fired.
Is that a barrier to success when you're running a company, or is it something that's not such a big deal? I'm just curious.
I think it's both ways. I think you have to have a little of fear, you know. It can't be too soft, but you shall be caring about people. I think that is really the key.
So either way, you care for people, but
you
not so soft on expectations.
Yeah, because you hire them, so you're part of that, right? And sometimes you can say, well, we both made a mistake. This doesn't work out. But I don't think I ever fired anyone here in US without giving them between 2 and 4 weeks full pay.
Yeah. It's nice to soften the landing, unless it's something quite egregious or damaging. Then maybe it's different. Now, we could talk for hours, and
Yeah.
we're definitely going to be talking more in the future. But one thing I'd love to invite you to participate in is what I call the fun question segment. And it's first timers on CMMS Radio. I have 3 fun questions to ask you.
Yeah.
There are no wrong answers, and just want to kind of hit you with them out of the gate and see what your answers are. So the first fun question is, what is your favorite music?
Oh, rock and roll.
Any particular kind?
And country. And rock and roll before it was destroyed. I mean, I'm so old that I like Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry. I mean, oh yeah, that was rock and roll.
All right.
And also Elvis. And I like a lot of country. I mean, really, really do.
Good.
My wife is French Italian, so she doesn't get that, but we joke about it, you know.
I'm sure.
Merle Haggard, for example, and Johnny Cash, and many, many others.
All right. Fun question number 2. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And on sport, one that you just like to root for, or maybe you used to play.
Ice hockey.
Nice. That's a good one.
I really played when I lived in Sweden. And then, 17-year-old, I left and went to sea. I couldn't play hockey on the ship, But I followed the Hurricanes. Yeah.
All right. That's a good one. Now, here's the big one. No wrong answers here. What is your philosophy, perspective? Is it even a thing when it comes to this concept of work-life balance?
Well, I'm old-fashioned. I said, without work, well, you can always say family first, and I 100% agree on that. That's absolutely. But without any job, well, you have to have a job and have an income and support your family. That's absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's fun because we can get to know you in a different way. It helps you and I just kind of have a little fun with something. I love hearing about the music and all that. But as we wind down this episode, Krister Idhammar, IDCON, you can find him on LinkedIn. He chimes in on things once in a while. You can read all kinds of stuff that he's authored, and you can see him at the upcoming Mainstream UK Summit. That's going to be in Birmingham, England. It's going to be on October 21st. You can get some early bird discounts, I believe, still. Well worth going to see his keynote and to shake this man's hand. And what's really nice about the presentations at Mainstream UK Summit is there's going to be roundtables right afterwards. There's going to be an opportunity to further dialogue about the presentation and the keynote or the speaking session that a lot of these experts are bringing. Krister, thank you so much for being here with me on CMMS Radio.
Thank you so much. Again, see you in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.